Commissioner, let me start off by saying, after a year on the job, how would you assess your first year? Kind of what you expected, easier, harder, what?
Well, it was very much what I expected. I think my overwhelming thought with respect to it is, people said to me, you got one of the greatest jobs in the world, and I tend to agree with that. It has been a fantastic experience for me personally. The clubs have been great, supportive. We feel like we've had a wonderful season this year and are looking forward to a great postseason.
All right, you have the Mets back in the postseason. They're facing the Dodgers.
Right.
So it's East, West, the two biggest markets. How good is that for business?
It's great for business. Having our larger markets in the playoffs is important to us. One of our challenges is to drive a big audience in the postseason. Obviously, large markets being in helps us. Having said that, I think we have some great stories in other markets. Kansas City was great for us last year. Attracted national attention because they hadn't been in so long. And I think Toronto could be that kind of story for us this year.
Could you ever envision realignment in baseball where, in particular, local rivalries, such as the Mets and the Yankees, could be playing in the same division?
Well, from a long-term planning perspective, one of the things that we have on our board is the notion of more geographic realignment. It helps in a variety of ways, local rivalries, as you point out, travel. We're going to look at it because we feel we need to be open to all sorts of ideas. I think the idea of the Yankees leaving the American League and the Mets leaving the National League is a little far-fetched.
But not totally out of the realm of possibility?
Like I said, we are in a mode where we try to take a look at everything and try not to be dismissive because it seems unlikely at first blush. So, like I said, it is something that we've talked about on a long-range basis. I don't see it as likely in the short term.
Let's change gears a second. If you will, believe one of your pet projects is making sure kids play baseball.
Right.
Is that because you're the commissioner of baseball and that's your business, or is there a concern about kids and baseball in the future?
I think it's a business-related concern from our perspective. The two biggest determinants of fan avidity as an adult are, did you play the game as a kid, and how old were you when you went to the ballpark for the first time? Our job is to make Major League Baseball as popular as possible, and we think in order to do that on a long-term basis, we have to get kids playing the game, and we have to make sure that parents continue to do what they've always done with respect to our game, that is pass it on to the next generation.
Correct me if I'm wrong, aren't you the first commissioner to have played Little League Baseball?
I think that's true. I know it's true, actually. Yes, that's true. I was, I'd say two things about Little League. It was a fantastic, informative experience for me, and I may have been one of the worst Little League players of all time.
Okay, well, we'll take your word on that. Let's now go to some big business. BAMTech. Major League Baseball has this digital company. Mm-hmm. What does it say about the future of the business for Major League Baseball when you have other sports and entertainment outlets such as the NHL, HBO, musicians, they're coming to you to get their products online?
Well, it's a tremendous compliment to Bob Bowman, and the individual that is the CEO at BAM, and to the team that works with him. They've built a great technology business. I think from the perspective of the owners, it's an additional asset that adds to the valuation of their franchises and a huge positive for the sport overall.
All right, one of your favorite topics, Pete Rose. You've met with Pete Rose. Major League Baseball announced it. Now, right. Apparently a decision will be rendered by the end of this year. Mm-hmm. I understand that both you and the Rose sides have agreed to refrain from making further comments.
That's true.
That said, when the decision is rendered, will it be yours and yours alone, or is it going to be a group situation?
It'll be my decision. It'll be my name at the bottom of the document, and at the end of the day, it'll be my decision.
Do you feel pressure one way or the other?
I really don't. The only concept that will guide me with respect to this is I want to be true to the Major League agreement and the Constitution and the Major League rules, and do the right thing for the institution that I'm charged with protecting.
Pete Rose remains out of baseball for the time being because of gambling, okay? You yourself have said we need to give a fresh consideration to legalize gambling.
Mm-hmm.
To me, gambling is still gambling.
Well, let me say this. What I said was we need to give fresh consideration to our relationship with legalized gambling. And what I mean by that is this. We have rules that govern whether you can have sponsorship arrangements with legalized gambling institutions, whether someone who was an investor in a legalized gambling enterprise could be an owner of a club. And that's really what I meant when I said we need to give reconsideration. I don't think that baseball's fundamental stance that illegal gambling certainly, and some kinds of legalized gambling, meaning sports books, could be detrimental to the integrity of the game.
Now, you also have sponsorship deals with sports fantasy operators such as DraftKings.
Right.
Is there a concern that it still invites younger people, whether there's an 18-year-old age limit or not, to get them involved in gambling?
Well, first of all, it's important to remember that legally, the games on DraftKings that we license the use of our marks for are not gambling under the federal statute that governs this area. They are considered fantasy or games of skills. Secondly, it's really important to remember that what happens on those fantasy sites is a fan goes in and picks a number of players from different teams within a set of guidelines and accumulates points. It's not like on DraftKings somebody's betting on the outcome of the Mets-Phillies game. That's not what happens. And I see a huge distinction between those two types of activities.
See, the reason I ask, as a kid growing up in Brooklyn, I remember how gambling started with the littlest innocent, you can be pitching nickels in a schoolyard, and it escalates. And my only concern is not just about Major League Baseball, all fantasy sports. It is something that gets kids started. I know how important kids and kids in baseball are to you.
Well, again, fundamentally, I see fantasy as a game, and the fantasy sites as a game with a prize associated with it. And I think that's different than, I know it's different than a true gambling operation where you're putting dollars at risk for a defined payback.
One thing I want to ask you about is video replay and the challenges. Are you happy with the way it's working, or do you think it needs tweaking? Because it always creates a great deal of discussion.
I think that the instant replay system will continue to evolve. But fundamentally, I'm happy with the system. I'm happy with the system because I see it as responsive to something that our research showed fans wanted. They wanted us to use the best possible technology to get important calls right. And I think that we have managed to do that for the most part. Are there going to be changes? Yes. In particular, I think we can continue to use better and better technology to reduce the amount of time that replays take, and I think that also will be fan-friendly. You will also see, I think, over time, a marginal expansion of the type of calls that will be subjected to replay.
Please promise me there'll never be video replay on balls and strikes. I'm begging you on that.
Yeah, that is a technological challenge. I know people have suggested this.
I'm sure.
We've actually got a fair amount of experience in this area because our umpires are evaluated using really the best technology that there is. And the reality is you could not use even that great technology real time to accurately call balls and strikes.